All right. Mr. Joey, I immediately forgot how to pronounce your name.
Kluesener.
Kluesener! This is Joey Kluesener. He's an awesome guy. I just met him. This is a blast. Looking at you through the dynamic plexiglass sculpture here in my Airbnb with lots of interesting surroundings.
Yes.
We're going to do a show on Saturday. We're featuring Joey and his keyboard player Zach. We're very excited to have you guys. Very privileged. It's going to be a blast, man.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. And I'm just trying to interview the artists for all this Cartel Coffee series, as we just mentioned. I just want to get to know you a little bit musically, man. So, what's your musical journey? Where did it start? What are you up to? Yeah, as thorough or as light as you want to be.
I played the clarinet for a couple of years as a 10-year-old because it was an extracurricular and there was a good energy in my elementary, and then my parents exposed me to the Disney film Peter and the Wolf from the 60s or something, where the animation includes the instrument demo at the opening of the score, which is narrated and translated. So discovered the bassoon, thought it was fascinating, started in the 7th grade, and found a bunch of special opportunities. A private teacher. Ohio is where the Columbus, Ohio area is where this took place. So the OSU was a big part in my development, and established some relationships. Joined youth orchestra, all state. I also was in marching band. I love percussion, and it was a good fit because marching bassoon's really, really weird and uncommon, and nobody recommends it.
Did you do marching bassoon?
No.
No, okay.
Yep.
So you didn't do it because it was weird.
I skipped the bassoon. Like, it wasn't even an offer. Like,
oh, okay.
You see what I mean? Like, they were like, join the percussion. All the double reeds play keyboards and timpani and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I think I even had like a 2-measure timpani solo in the band in the feature. But the point is, it was a great expansion of my like musical knowledge and awareness and things. And I was a little loud singer in my like church choir back then when I was a child. So there's wiring within me. My mother's side and father's side both provided like musical influences from family members that had skill and talent.
Excellent.
Yeah. So anyway, then I went to Cincinnati Conservatory at UC and did most of a double degree in education performance. Came to ASU, finished a master's in 1 year, and joined the Air Force. I won a job on a tour, and they offered me a position. But while I was getting ready to go to basic, the government canceled funding, so I no longer had a job, and that broke my heart.
Ooh.
So came right back to school because it was a safety net, and started a DMA that took way too long and was way too expensive than it needed to be. But during that, I did some grassroots projects and I built a brand, which is the Paradise Winds, and that's now my chamber outfit. It's currently a reed quintet, and it's been established as a reed quintet since 2015 consistently. We have 3 records. One of them is a fusion, like blues rock with the rhythm section. The other 2 are mostly original compositions, which were written for the Paradise Winds Reed Quintet. So we're super proud of that. Like, composers gave us gifts, you know what I mean? Like, we weren't always commissioning at that time. So people just saw us play and were like, let's write. We want to see more of that. So
Wonderful.
So anyway, so we have some great relationships there, and locally in Phoenix. I live in Chandler. I used to live in Tempe. Completed my DMA, but before that I started working in the Maricopa system, all the local colleges. So I've been teaching at Chandler Gilbert College since 2008, and then I have spit spot touch at like Paradise Valley Community College in Scottsdale. Currently I work in Scottsdale too, so I have 2 of those roles. In 2017 though, I joined I joined corporate America, so I have a day job, and that's been incredible opportunity and growth and awareness and development too. So fortunately, I'm able to do a little bit of music and work that job, and that's kind of my my income and a lot of my creative stream. I run a bassoon quartet at Chandler. I have a small private studio
Amazing.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like the career pathy answer.
Okay, I was curious. I was like, what is a really super talented bassoon player who I know is in some really wonderful outfits? What is this guy doing for a living,
Yeah.
and how does he maintain the creative balance? That's always the struggle. Is you've
Yeah.
got to have the creative outlet. You've
Yeah.
got to practice your craft, but you also have to make a substantial living, especially if you have a family.
Right.
And that's always a challenge to navigate that. And everybody has a little bit of a different story in the way they do
Yeah,
it.
there's no single shape it can
Yeah.
take. It's really something. For 7 years, I was working in a summer orchestra based in Central Virginia, and that was a really pleasant opportunity. I was actually a student there in the summer, in college and prior. So I had good relationships there, and I did some other summer programs when I was, up and coming in as a student. Though I don't want to leave those out because those are very valuable to development. But anyway,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that was ended, and I didn't have to travel in the summer anymore, and so I live in Chandler with
Awesome.
2 dogs and my spouse.
That's
us.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent. What do you do for your day job?
It's in the category of what's called integrated facilities management, but my role within that setting is surrounding contracts for procurement of either assets or provisions. So when you procure something, you set up a value towards a need, and there's a business case for your enterprise or for maybe a client, and then you invest and you contract it because you need to protect it legally. So I have a contract skill set, project skill set, and I do analytics in that category. So sometimes I'm touching software and supporting the intelligence of it and how it functions, and sometimes I'm touching finance. Sometimes I touch strategy, like the overarching executive decision making. They ask us for inputs, So I've been doing that in various forms for. I just completed my 6th year. This last week was my work anniversary. Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of like if somebody asked me, like, what do you teach in music theory? And I was like, we teach 4 species counterpoint, and like throw out all these terms that maybe the other person didn't know.
Yeah.
It sounds great though. It sounds like a great job as far as I can tell.
It's a real thing. And it's very important, actually. Like every institution you've ever, for example, if it's of a certain scale, even small business has to procure assets to function.
Okay.
So like,
I think I understand.
yeah,
that
so like
sentence.
you as a music teacher, if you have a
Right.
subscription to Sight Reading Factory, that's a part of your expense to cost of doing business.
Sure.
That's procurement. You're a subscriber, so you have a contract, even though you don't control much of it.
That makes
You
sense.
just buy in, right?
Okay.
Or you name it, whatever those apps are that come with a cost. That's another form of you're procuring an asset to do your job. Yeah. So you can
Gotcha.
build that into your price to your private student, to your classroom work, to your, to people that you coach who want to take up teaching themselves. Like, these are my practices and I recommend these tools, or avoid these tools. These are bad suppliers. And then same issue with manufacturing. So if you're like, these are my favorite nylon strings of all classical guitars I've ever had to deal with, that's a form of, your expertise reflecting through equipment. So manufacturer relationship in that sense.
That makes sense.
Yes. So there's hard assets, which are stuff and things. There's soft, which is software and people. And so that's just, kind of like some 101 of procurement, some basic.
And you sound passionate about it. You're not like
Well-
apologizing for it as you explain
No.
or anything, which I have heard some people do.
Oh, I see. I love my company. I think
That's
it is
great.
an incredible institution, and the way I got into it too was kind of like by accident, so that's a blessing.
Okay.
I can't ignore that factor, and the skills that I have now that I didn't when I started is profound. That to me is really special.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it's just for any musician that's like considering, what am I going to do if? Because that's a big question.
Right.
If is a big question, right? So
Right.
like, what am I going to? Well, don't be afraid of it. If you have courage, you'll figure it out.
Okay.
That's
You're
it.
speaking specifically about finding a second vocation.
Maybe.
What do I do if I
Yeah.
need to? It is an
Yes.
option. It is a legitimate option.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, and talking to young musicians, I say a lot of the same things. Like, be
Yeah.
willing to try a lot of different things.
Yeah,
and
right.
find a lot of skills that you can. Because when I was growing up, like, the mentality that I just absorbed was, you'll grow up, you'll go to college, you get out of college, you find one job, basically.
Yeah.
You work that job like 40, 45 hours a week. You'll
Yeah.
maybe move to another job in 12 years, and then eventually you'll retire.
No.
And that is not at all. It's actually, I'm thankful for that because it's a fun and exciting life to
Yes.
do a lot of different things,
Yeah, it
to be
engages the
creative.
mind and the soul really deeply. You have new relationships. You don't have to see the same people constantly. There's a lot of variety, and if that feeds you, it's healthy. It's nourishing. If it stresses you out, obviously maybe pick something else.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of stress, that's funny. Yeah, I like that laugh went on a little longer than I thought, so I can. There's some energy there. I can sense it. But okay. So speaking of that balance, how do you find that balance between, like, when you want to practice and work on a new piece that a composer just delivered to you?
Oh yeah.
Versus like something that you have to finish with your job. What are your personal boundaries for that, and how do you navigate that in your life?
Well, it's the average corporate setting is like 8 to 9 hours a day, and there's more hours of wake time than that in a day. So that's it. You just have to strike a zone of where you feel your best self while you do all of that. And it requires experimentation, trial and error, big time, and patience. But it doesn't take forever. It's not terribly exhausting of a process to come up with your balance. So yeah, so it's off hours. I can take vacation for residency work, or I'm stuck in a city for 3 days, just teaching or whatever it's going on, and conference work. Same thing, take vacation.
Like, we're talking music conferences?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so they're very understanding.
Well, they don't need, that's none of their business, interestingly.
Oh, yeah.
You
So
see
you
what I'm
just
saying?
take the time that they give you and use it. Yeah,
you
that's
earn it,
nice.
then you have it, then you use it. Yeah, see what I'm saying?
I did the same thing when I worked a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I would use my personal days for, like, composing and, go out with the wife for lunch. Okay, back to this piece and that kind of thing. And
it's pretty cool. And the companies, the good ones, are interested in your mobility and your agency with what you earn for things like time off. And that's something that I don't think everybody understands in the landscape. Like, someone has their hand on my neck the whole time. If that's true, you're in a bad job. Because there should be a lot of trust, and once you establish that your capability has reached the standard average, then that independence rolls, and now you have a new depth of trust, and your people let you do your thing. You meet targets and deadlines, and you're a good team player. Exactly.
Yeah,
it's not complicated.
No, not at all.
No, and the great majority of people that do these jobs are not super excellent, gifted musicians, or some. Maybe they have other special skills or something they've cultivated, or maybe they were profound athletes in their lives, something impressive, scholarship, or they're like the best crochet knitter you ever met, and they like populate a little market of product, and they take it out to farmers markets on the weekend. Like, maybe that's that same person, but they also have a day job. And it's really interesting. Like, it's not necessarily about being the best at doing it. It's about being effective with what's needed of you to do. And then you can fit yourself into whatever will work for you ultimately. So I've met a ton of people. I heard about it in grad school, and then since then I've met people who were similar, where they like did musical things, master's, doctorate, some of them, and then they transitioned into something else, and they do a really good job where they end up. They get decent to impressive salaries. They have futures because they can plan a retirement. They have vacation because they earn it. It's like an interesting format for living. You don't have to be a starving artist if you don't want to.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many avenues you can take, and it depends on what kind of person you are too. If you like the stability and reliability of a job like that, if you like to be somebody who hunts for gigs constantly, if you like to be somebody who's always interacting with other people and teaching lessons, I mean, there's so many different ways that you could go.
It's true.
That's really cool.
Yep, and I can still flex my musical entrepreneur interests if I choose to. Kind of like partnering it with Oh My Ears for something. or not, or I can lay low, or I, you know, if I have a family priority and I need to travel, I better not book myself. You know, like those things are now much more in focus and perspective and manageable than probably 10 years ago and 15 years ago. You know, when I was still in my 20s, that was not as straightforward of a map to travel through. So so anyway, that it, like getting older and a little bit more capable and a little bit, you know, those things help a lot.
That's great.
Yeah, being a better executive decision maker for your own benefit, those kinds of things, that really changes, and it's been good. It's been good to me.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody, but it's been good to me.
Now, speaking of your other projects and your musical entrepreneurial abilities, can you tell me a little bit more about, you have a bassoon and keyboard duo, Zach, and Paradise Winds.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about those and how those groups formed and what their mission is and that kind of thing.
Sure. The story of Zachary Bramble, I hope you watched this, Zach, because up to this moment, this is being recorded, he and I have never shaken hands in person.
Okay,
He is a relationship only.
Okay.
Yeah, through mutuals, through Paradise Winds members. And Zach is a trained composer through, institutions, ASU and U of A, for example. I don't know his whole story either. Oh, he used to play in a funk band. He's got a wide vocabulary.
All right.
Yeah, because we riff constantly on this composer, that composer.
Excellent.
He named his dogs after composers too. Like one is called Stravinsky, which is one, I think. And my dog's name is Iggy after Igor, because Stravinsky's one of my top.
Okay.
So we bond over a couple of these things, but Bramble and bassoon has never been in public. It is pure free improvisation. We have no repertoire. We're gonna play improv games together and or with others and see what happens. So I hope you don't pack up totally once you're done with ensemble, because maybe we want some guitar input.
Oh no!
I'm just saying.
Okay,
we'll
see. We'll see.
So Bramble and bassoon is brand new. It's brand new. It's never been done, and I have experienced a lot with free improvisation and other formats of improvisation. I don't speak great like head harmony and that kind of I didn't get a bop vocab, but I love it. I listen but anyway, so Paradise Winds has a much longer story.
Okay.
In 2009, I, as a grad student at ASU, I also have a singing skill set, and I did a lot of church choirs for
Got that
years.
resonant voice.
It was weird. Yeah. It helps having a giant head.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I cultivated that and was able to find some work, and there was a fundraiser at one of these churches in Paradise Valley, and they wanted some lighthearted classical something. Like music, live music. So I had a reed trio, which is a wonderful set of repertoire, and we named it Paradise Trio at first because that was just three. My mentors at ASU gave me a tip, and they were like, well, if you take out trio and just call it winds instead, woodwind, wind, you can have 4 players, 2 players, whatever.
Right.
Which to me as an entrepreneur, that meant if I could only find a flute player for this gig, then we're still Paradise Winds. Right. It's just the 2 of us, but we're still Paradise Winds.
Right.
Even if we bring in a keyboard, a pianist or something, somebody play harpsichord or piano, we're still Paradise Winds with a keyboard artist. Exactly. Yeah, so that was why that transformed, and then I just kind of discovered the reed quintet specific, oboe, clarinet, bassoon. That's the reed trio, but plus bass clarinet and saxophone, which is much newer in the history of woodwind chamber music. So that was my new flavor, like my new sexy. I was so excited about it, and I wanted to hear it all the time. I love playing it. It's so fun to play. Oh yeah. It's like the joy of being a violinist in a string quartet, because those timbres mingle, or a saxophonist in a sax quartet. The woodwind quintet is important, but it does not ring my spinal ticklers like, you know what I'm saying? Like it just doesn't.
Well, anytime you bring up the old school ensemble, the quintet,
the original,
my composition teachers when I was taking lessons would always go, man, that's a lot of colors. That's
it's
a
true.
lot of different sounds.
It's really true, and it's difficult to align and blend in a lot of settings, which means like good groups really are good.
Yes.
And the same thing is true for a reed quintet. There's different kinds of saxophone pedagogies out there. So there's this like hazier quality and then this more brilliant quality. They're their own schools. Clarinet too is somewhat like that, and then honestly, the bassoon and the oboe have these belief systems or these philosophies about tone. So if you end up in a setting where the five of you want to blend, you'll get it, even if one came up in one version and one came up in a different, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it is a thing to figure out. So anyway, so I started, we started doing some reed quintet pieces in like 2010, pretty early in the life of the group, but we didn't go strictly reed quintet until 2015. We started talking about it in like 13, 14, and then from 15 forward, it was like only this, and all these albums and these commissions, and a lot of conference appearances. And we now also have residencies on our resume.
Oh, wonderful!
We even placed in an interesting, like a global, some kind of chamber music award setting. We got a silver in it. So
amazing.
It's not a top 10 known one, but it was valuable.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I was able to promote us to various entities to get gigs in the community, in Tempe, throughout Phoenix, Scottsdale, East Valley. We've done weddings, retirement spaces, museums, libraries, bars, restaurants, coffee shops, and all of it's special for some reason or another.
Now, how does that work? Getting gigs as a ensemble that maybe people don't even know what.
Yeah, that's
tricky.
In there. It's tricky.
I had another reed quintet ask me that, and like, hey, can you kind of like put the word out for us? And I was like, sure. I'm not sure how to do that, but now how do you do that?
I think it's about a relationship primarily, and that's tricky. Knowing what the interests of and the tolerances of the host will then help you determine if there is a potential fit.
Okay.
So if that restaurant, if they want a quieter voice and they have low light and candles and stuff, and they're not necessarily into boisterous, exciting things, you may not, 5 people's too many. You may only need like 1 or 2 sounds to really slip ambiance into it. And so that's just one
subtle
example.
Incarnation of Paradise Winds.
Well, it wouldn't even be a good fit for us.
It would not at all.
Potentially.
Okay.
But that's the thing, and I did end up in some situations too where adversity was unexpected, and you had to be flexible instantly. Like a group is on stage, there was a string quartet, and the manager comes up to me because I was running the event, and they said the string quartet is too loud. I have customers complaining, and that is frightening.
Whoa.
For a venue that's a restaurant. Their primary thing is to serve food. You have to communicate with your guest and the team, and then the kitchen, and all these dynamics of communication. So if you're distorting that, you're like, oops, I didn't get it. So there's this learning curve, and 2, the audience is not always interested in being challenged or introduced to something interesting and new when they're out. Like, I'm supposed to be relaxing. I don't want to learn right now. I don't have an interest in going outside of my comfort zone. That's why I came to this same old like pasta joint, the same because they have this bottle of wine and 2 pasta dishes special on Tuesday nights. You know what I mean?
You want some comfort there, yeah.
And so like sometimes the guest is like, I don't care about oboe. Get it out of here. and it's not necessarily like the individual and the oboe. It's just the customer experience. So that's what I mean about fit and relationship. Like if the venue is not keen, it's kind of dead before it can ever grow into something. On the other hand, if you have a venue willing to take a risk, some really cool things can bloom out of it. And I have several stories of places where I just came up once and I said, I have this group of like whatever, and we're gonna play. We have an hour program. And what are you funded or not? Like those questions are important. And then I distribute the funds and align and allocate, procure, get it all set, curate basically. From there, they come back and they say, our audience really liked this. What else are you capable of? That's a sign of a relationship trust platform. You need to go and make some other models. So I came up with a bunch of schemes for them. And I was working with a grassroots institute that actually birthed Oh My Ears because it was a winning piece in a composition competition, which was one of the things that sprouted a fruit off of this main trunk of Take a Risk, Perform.
Okay.
So I drove a composition competition, and the piece was called "Oh My Eyes, Oh My Ears." Yeah,
That's where that came
by
from.
the Oh My Ears founder, Elizabeth Bayer. Before
You're kidding me! I didn't know this.
Yeah. Shit. So
man,
I'm
connections.
and that was with Classical Revolution Phoenix, PHX, Classical Revolution PHX.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, all this stuff evolved, and these various programs, like the Tempe History Museum is a big relationship, and like prayer to them and props to them. The library and the museum were a big supporter, and I wrote numerous curations, and they still run several of them all on their own now.
Buddy.
But it was my original idea.
Come on.
So it's really rewarding to know that like the community has this, and there's little families to show. Like your kids might really dig it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
I think so.
And a little food truck would pop up. The little Pilatus like ice cream cart would show up.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a hang. It's a festival. It's an event.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
I had some great mentors too. One worked at the Musical Instrument Museum, and
Okay.
one worked for the Phoenix Chorale at the time.
Okay.
And so they gave me tons of brilliant guidance and access to spaces in occasions, and they gave me organizational tactics. So we produced some things, and we were really proud of them. I have a studio up at home, and the wall, it's like a maximalist place. Like the walls are covered in posters, and several of them are from Classical Revolution and stuff.
Oh my goodness gracious.
So that's the birth. Yeah. So it's just these. You take a risk. You see what happens.
Yeah.
If you can afford it for whatever spectrum of cost, to me it was worth it because nothing like that existed before.
No.
So there was this originality that I was chasing.
Yeah.
And
There's so much potential in the valley too.
it's kind of fascinating. Yeah.
There's so much. It's like kind of raw. It's like untilled soil, but there's so much potential with really talented musicians, places where you could have centers of art and culture and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I always think we could be one of these big cities that are like on the map and known for music.
If the funding goes there,
that helps.
There's so many people, and it's so spread out that these little pocket orchestras, they end up with a membership who care, but the membership don't always have the keenest of. It takes them a long time to sound as good as they need to. So everyone has a different rehearsal model. Some people audition and they pay their principals. The rest are volunteer, and this is all disclosed. There's management structures. Some are nonprofit, 501c3. Some are just somebody's hobby. And they're dumping their own cash into the flow because they can afford to. Not like we said earlier. There's not one shape,
Right. Oh man.
Are we doing okay?
We're doing okay. Last question, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I was checking the time with my toe on the iPad. That's what my odd posing was, in case that shows up if anyone watches it. But okay, so last question is: with all these things that you've had your tendrils into for 10 years apparently, how do you organize your thoughts and your plans with regards to all this? You've brought up so many different things that you've done in so many different ensembles, so many projects. How do you organize your thoughts? Because I know what that's like. You have projects you want to do, projects in progress, projects that are near completion that you have deadlines for. You have, and for each one of those main categories, you have so many things you have to do.
I see.
And how do you keep all that kind of? For me, it's kind of like this juggling act that I've slowly become comfortable with.
Yeah.
Over the past 10 years or so.
Yeah.
But what does your management system look like? Is it mental? Is it analog? Is it digital?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think it's whatever I needed at the time. So it evolved, but it always started with my imagination. That was the first thing I thought of when you asked that.
Okay.
Like, can I conceive this? How will it work is the next big, there's a 3-tier system that this Pulitzer composer, whose name is escaping me unfortunately, but I might think of it later. And he had 3 personalities on this. He had the realist, he had the critic, excuse me, realist, critic, and then it was like the innovator or the creative. So the creative comes up with this idea. The realist touches it and says, "Can you?" The critic says, "Well, watch out for this. Be careful with that." And it just keeps this. So eventually, you touch those points enough, and it becomes a tangible thing. and there it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
You've extruded it.
Right.
Okay.
So somehow that was I was introduced to that concept in like 2008, and I didn't really start messing with these kinds of projects until a little bit later. So that kind of was good timing. And that's how I do improv. That's how I do a lot of things.
But do you keep all these? Do you hold all these things in your head, or do you write them down? Do you write, because you mentioned your workspace where you have posters and stuff.
Oh, sure.
I keep like lots of lists.
Yes, right. So there's to-do lists for keeping, for the follow-up, for the setup, the commitment, the contract, the check this, check that, follow up that. That's important. You need a workflow. If you're not looking at a workflow and you have too many things, you will drop a ball.
You will.
100%. I'm sure, and I know I made mistakes like constantly, but like my resolve, it was good enough, for that. So anyway, I think anybody can do it if they're willing to be patient and take a risk.
Okay.
And trust some courage in themselves and their relationships with others. Like, I know, you have to know who you want to put in that role that you imagine. If they can do it, then you have another step to go to the tangible result versus just the concept. So
this is beautiful. And when you speak, I feel like you're verging on slam poetry or something. It's very eloquent, the way that you have all these little expressions and stuff. This is very entertaining, and so many valuable little nuggets in there from an artist who's been active for a long time in our area.
That's really sweet of you.
We really appreciate
Thank you,
man.
I'm looking
that was
forward to it.
awesome.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to rehearsal. We're going to go to rehearsal now. Woo, all right.